welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Both Lena and I are so glad that you have joined us today. This is awesome. I'm your host, Karen E. Osborne, and my guest today is Lena Gibson. Hey, Lena.
Hello. Nice to
How
meet
are
you.
you today?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. We're going to talk about Lena's book and her reading life and everything. There's lots of things for us to talk about. So let's get rolling, right? So Lena is an award-winning author. She was a voracious reader from age 8. That seems to be something that all of the writers, every writer I know has in common.
It
Every once in a
started out
while,
as avid readers.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. Every once in a while, I meet someone who didn't become a reader till later in life, but almost everybody like was reading at, early ages. Lena seeks wonderful books in which to escape. Because of her passion for different genres, something she and I have in common, she combines elements of many in her writing. As an adult, newly recognized with autism, he often creates characters that reflect this experience. We're going to talk about that. She has two published novels, novels, two published novels, and two more coming out in just a few months. This is just so amazing and wonderful. So let's start with, I was really intrigued. You put right out there on your website that you were newly diagnosed. And I
yeah.
wondered why you felt that was important to share with your readers.
I wanted to share it because it was such a revelation for me. So I was 49 when we figured this out. I've lived my whole life just coping with everything and not knowing why I felt a little bit different or there was a disconnect sometimes. And sometimes I would feel bad to be the way I was, that I would cry at karate or I would cry at school because I'd become overwhelmed, but I didn't know that that's why it was. I would cry out of frustration and it made such a big difference to be able to find out what this was and apply the lens backward to my life and think that was why. And it it wasn't an excuse, but it made it more like permission to be who I am. And I wanted people to know that because maybe if I'm courageous about it, someone else will be.
Lena, that just so resonates with me. I remember when I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, and I was in my 40s, and to have a name for my behavior, to have a name for my feelings, it was like, okay, there's, there's a reason. It was like this big
It was
lift.
freeing.
It
Yes.
was freeing. Exactly right.
And
And
so
I
all my
agree.
life, my feelings were too big. And I, it made sense now.
It all made sense. And then I love also that you said that by putting it out there, that gives somebody else permission, that once we name it, then we're part of a community, you
Well,
know.
and before 1990, there were zero females diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Zero. Because they didn't think it appeared in girls and women. They thought it didn't exist. And that blew me away. But it's because it looks different in girls and women. And most of us have masked our whole life and learned to fit in and cope and maybe just have those little things like feelings are too big or very rigid about routines but or anxiety. And I've also been called, do I have social anxiety? I have all these other things, but honestly this made more sense. It fits all the pieces.
It's all the pieces. Wow. How wonderful. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So you like to blend genres as a writer. So can you give us some examples from your four books, or at least from your two that are out there?
So in The Edge of Life, I wanted to write an end of the world story, but it's
Mm.
also a romance. So it's an apocalyptic story of racing to the safety of a bunker with an asteroid crashing to Earth. But it is much an action adventure story as well as this post apocalyptic story, as well as a romance. And in The Wish, it's a story of a woman finding her own voice and learning to speak up for herself. So it's women's fiction, but there's a
Mm.
lot of romance. It is also equally a thriller, and I researched aspects of what a thriller needs to have to make sure it fit. And so it is very much both, but there's also time travel. So it's women's fiction with speculative elements that's also a thriller and has a lot of romance.
Yeah, this is my kind of book. This is totally
And,
my kind of
and
book.
that's what I like to read. I get tired of reading just romances or just historical fiction or just thriller. I like all of them in themselves, but I need to mix it up. So when I started writing, it felt natural to me to make stories that I would like by combining things.
Huh. Do you have copies of your books handy?
So I have The Edge of Life here. It has a brand new cover, but I don't have one with the brand new cover that just happened. But if people were interested, they could check out my Facebook page or my website and see the new cover. That this one was to appeal more probably to the like romance side of it. But there's a new cover that's more the science fictiony apocalyptic side.
Yes, I saw that on Facebook and it's beautiful. It's very cool.
And then I also have The Wish, and she's falling through time.
Yeah,
So
look at
she
that.
wishes herself back in time 5 years accidentally. And the new ones, I have the cover, but I don't have a way to show it, except again, if people were interested, I'll be doing a cover reveal for Switching Tracks next week.
And well, actually, by the time this is aired, it will
Oh,
already
yes,
be
you're right. So it'll be
revealed.
up. People will be able to see it, and I might even be close to sharing the cover for the sequel, The Long Haul.
Yeah, so these are, so you wrote a sequel, one's coming out in January, is that right? Or February?
February 1st, and the
And
second one is June 6th for the Train
so
Hoppers.
yeah, so a series this is,
Yeah,
right?
I'm just
So
finishing the draft of the third one, like right now. I'm an epilogue away from being finished the series.
wow, so just tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I was inspired to write it by my grandfather's stories of riding on the rails during the Great Depression. That
Mm.
his family, Grapes of Wrath style, lost their farm in Kansas, packed up the truck, and it was mom, dad, and four brothers, and they drove to Utah where they had family and were staying there. But the older boys, I believe, were like 16, 17, and 18 years old, including my grandfather, who was the oldest. And they didn't like to live on charity and felt like there was something they could do. And so they hopped on a train and went to California to pick fruit and send back their wages. And they traveled back and forth a few times. And I was thinking, what an interesting idea. I don't write historical fiction because I like to make stuff up. And historical fiction, you have to stick to the history. There's a lot of stuff that has to be correct. And if I found a story I wanted to tell that much, I would. But I was like, what if it was set in the future? And I talked to people about trains and how little they had changed since the 30s. And I was like, okay, I can go with this. And so it's set 170 years in the future from now, after there's been major environmental collapse and disasters of all kinds of things, and societies had to reset. And there's a corporation in control of the Western United States. And this is one woman's struggle to make a better life for a bunch of people. She finds a key to the seed vaults, that there really are seed vaults scattered throughout the United States. And she finds a map and a key. And she goes on a journey to try and bring those seeds back to the world because they're all hungry, and this corporation who controls the food won't let them eat.
Wow, that sounds really good. That sounds wonderful.
I suppose they
Um,
get to eat, but they're not allowed to grow their own food. And
Food,
yeah, right.
yeah. So that's really, and it's a, so far it's a trilogy.
Yes, and I'm ending it at 3, though who knows, there may be other spin-offs.
Nice.
It's an ensemble cast with 5 main characters. So who knows what'll happen later. There's a couple of them that might, there's ideas.
I know, and the characters kind of demand things. We think that we're done, but then our characters start talking to us, and we have to move
Exactly.
on. We
Yeah,
have to
Suda
press.
said there's more to his story, so there might be more to his story.
So what started you on a writing journey? What was your, how did you decide, like, okay, I've got to do this?
The moment was 1998, and it was the summer, and I ran out of reading material. That doesn't happen very often because I read from so many different genres, but all of my favorite authors, I was kind of caught up and I didn't know what to read and I couldn't find anything. And I thought, maybe I could write a book. And the first one took a long time because I had summers off as a teacher, so I was able to write in the summer. But I had small children soon after that, and I was interrupted all the time, and it was hard to write. When they got older, I came back to it and thought, I need to finish that book. And so I did. And then I set it aside, and that is a practice book. But I needed to finish it. And then since then, I've written 9 more.
Wow.
And Black Rose Writing published the 5th one first, and then the 3rd one second. And now we're working our way through the others.
The others, that is wonderful. What a great story. What a great. So, you finished reading all of your favorite writers when you started writing. So tell us a little bit about what you like to read.
Well, in those days, my main number 1 was fantasy and science fiction.
Mhm.
And since then, I read a little bit of everything. So, do you want what I
Yeah, give us
like my
some
recent
examples.
reads?
Yeah, give us some examples of books that you're
So,
reading
I,
that you
I
love.
checked, I checked on Goodreads for what I'd been reading this year, and I've read 88 that register this year, and I have another about 10 more that are arcs I've read for other authors. But my favorites were C.C. Humphrey's "Someday I'll Find You." It's historical fiction. It's based on the story of how his parents met. And he was a Canadian fighter pilot for the British in World War II, and his mother was a Norwegian spy. She worked for the British government, but she was Norwegian and was sent home to Norway to keep track of some things. And he waited until both his parents had passed to write the story, but it had been the story he always wanted to write. But he didn't want anybody or relatives or anyone to get in trouble or
Be
anything like that.
upset
And
or
so it's
anything.
fiction,
Yeah.
but there's a core of real that I really
And
liked.
say the name again.
"Someday I'll Find You" by C.C. Humphreys.
Nice.
And the other 2 were by the same author that were my favorites this year, um, by Ashley Poston, "The 7-Year Slip" and "Dead Romantics." And they are both romances with a little bit of something else thrown in. They, a little bit of magic. So there's some fantasy in them I like that genre blend.
Yeah, nice. It's great. Well, thank you for this. So if our watchers, listeners, readers, writers wanted to be in touch with you, they wanted to follow you on social media, how can they be in touch?
Well, my Facebook page, just Lena Gibson, I use the most. I also have a website that if you look up Lena Gibson author, it's a WordPress site. And I'm trying to use Instagram more, and I can be found there too. And it's lena.gibson15 is how you'll find me there.
Well, I will follow you on Instagram. I will look for you for sure. And I hope all of you will look for Lena. I hope that you will buy her 2 books that are out, that you'll look for her 2 books that are her well, it's going to be 3, but the one that we know for sure is coming out in February, that you will look for that. And I hope that you are already following me, I'm Karen E. Osborne on my author page, Karen E. Osborne, author, Facebook, and Karen E. Osborne on my website, my YouTube channel, Karen E. Osborne, where you'll find, where hopefully that's where you found this video. And also I'm on Instagram, Karen E. Osborne. And I loved your comment about historical fiction, that you have to be so precise and that you like to make up stuff. So I had my new book that just came out is historical fiction, but I'm never going to do this again. Because like you, I like to make things so, and all that research was like really hard.
I
Thank
totally
you, thank you.
understand.
Yes. Thank you all for being with us. And I hope you'll be with us again next week on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.